I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents.
In this tough economy, they can make a living.
If you try to do the right thing and have a lot of faith, and He answers prayers.
What you need to know to prepare for battle with the swine flu.
Shaking hands is not the problem. The problem is you don't use proper hygiene after you've shaken hands.
And in the year for priests, meet one man who's trying to attract more of them.
Everything I ever thought that priesthood would be, it has been for me, thanks be to God, so much more.
Good Friday evening, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. Well, there are more than 3.5 million homeless people in the United States, and unfortunately with the recession, that number keeps on going up.
Absolutely, unfortunately. But here in New York, many of them have actually found help from a recycling center in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. It's called Sure We Can, and it allows anyone, not just the homeless, to trade cans, bottles, and plastic in exchange for money.
It was founded by a Catholic nun and a man who is the self-proclaimed king of cans. Our cameras caught up with them and found two friends running a business that's giving the poor help and hope.
Blessed are you, the poor. It's so difficult. We talk about that, but who really believes that, no? I mean, we think that the rich are blessed, the poor are miserable, no? But when you hear them and the peace that they have, many of them, and yeah, they suffer, they struggle, but there is deeper peace, deeper joy in their life, and deeper conviction of the relationship with God. They experience God very real in their life.
How did you and Anna meet?
Well, I met her through Picture the Homeless. We were trying to start a mechanics committee there.
I was somehow invited to live with the people in the street, and well, I decided to be part of that community of homeless people, and it was there which through a common friend I came to know Eugene, and through him I started to learn the art of canning, because it is an art.
And we got this group called DRC. And that's who we used to deal with before we started this business. One of the reasons why we started this, because they wasn't treating us fair and we couldn't get no help from them. So I guess that's how Sure We Can it came about.
One of the things I came to know through the office I was related to at the UN was that this Hilton Foundation Sisters Fund were giving money from projects helping to improve the lives of the poor people. So I applied. They gave us $10,000, which was very good for the first months of rent, the deposit in the first months.
A redemption center is for people like me. Some people just had some bad luck. Some people do it because they need it. It's all different reasons, but we can help people a little more than just buying their cans for nickel.
Maria carries a heavy load every morning. I said, in fact, you have another place that you could give these things closer to your place. She said, yeah, maybe it's closer, but you know, the person who is there is not treating us well. So I really like here because you treat us well with respect and love, and I feel happy.
And we just basically try to get them assorted and try to put them on pallets and try to count the cans.
We need to validate this work as something which is good for the person, because it's money that is thrown on the street, and good for the society and for our nature.
I think I was a canner myself for about 20 years myself. So I mean, that's why I kind of feel for the canners, because I done been there, because we don't know what tomorrow gonna bring.
As much as they can feel part of it, and that's why the name is Sure We Can. We pick up cans and we can manage this project.
It brought me, a whole lot closer to God, because I know if you try to do the right thing and have a lot of faith, and He answers prayers.
Well, for more on Sure We Can, you can just head over to our blog. Go to currentsny.net and click on Riding the Wave. We'll tell you how to get in touch with Eugene Gadsden and Sister Anna.
Well, stay tuned. There's much more Currents coming up straight ahead.
Coming up, what's the best defense against swine flu? We'll ask the doctor.
The swine flu is 2 days before you get it, any symptoms, you're infective.
Welcome back to Currents. I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure. Well, we can't get away from it no matter how hard we try. We're talking about H1N1 or the swine flu.
Last spring, 4 schools in the Brooklyn diocese were temporarily closed because of outbreaks. Concern is so great that in many dioceses, they've stopped giving the sign of peace and the communion cup.
And actually in this diocese, it's up to the individual parishes. But to find out more about how you can best be prepared to fight the virus, I sat down earlier in the week to ask the doctor, our very own Steve Gardner. Joining us now is Dr. Stephen Gardner, who is the host of Ask the Doctor right here on NET. Dr. Gardner, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Well, just to get kind of frame all of this, the H1N1 virus is something, of course, that everyone is extremely concerned about right now. And I think a lot of churches may be concerned about that as well because of the passing of the peace, shaking of the hands, and then also during communion with the cup as well. Some churches have banned the use of the cup. Here in the Brooklyn diocese, it's up to each individual parish as to what they want to do. What do you think should be some of the concerns of churchgoers with the H1N1 virus?
I think they have to understand that the biggest risk with the H1N1 is it's spread by touching. Typically, we think about coughing in someone's face. So I would use the church, attending church services to educate the people because shaking hands is not the problem. The problem is you don't use proper hygiene after you've shaken hands or drinking out of the cup. As long as you use the proper hygiene and proper precautions, you're not going to have a problem. Right. You could use that experience to carry on to the everyday activities because what are you going to do? You go in the subway, you're going to touch the hands, you're going to go to work inadvertently, you're going to shake someone's hand. Does that mean you should stop and avoid all contact? No. If you use Purell or go to the bathroom and wash your hands after each handshake, there's no problem with that. Right. So what better place to start the proper hygiene than in church?
Right, absolutely. Now, do you think that, let's talk about just a second about the chalice in particular, about the cup used during communion. Should that be of concern to people because, obviously a lot of lips come in contact with that cup during a particular communion?
That's something that I think, again, common sense. If you see somebody who's coughing, I would avoid, obviously, if somebody's sick or coughing, to avoid drinking out of the cup.
Right.
Now, the only problem with the swine flu is 2 days before you get it, any symptoms, you're infective. And 4 days after you have symptoms, you're infective. So you may be in that period where you may think, I'm okay, there's no problem. So that's a tricky issue that the handshaking I have no problem with. The drinking out of the same cup, it could be a problem because you may have someone who means well, who doesn't even know I'm going to get the flu in 2 days, that I'm harboring the virus.
Right. So just kind of a common sense thing. Just kind of be alert on that.
But I think that's something that each each priest would have to decide. I would think, depending upon what the illness rate is in the congregation. But that's a tough one. The drinking is a tough one. The handshaking I can deal with.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and as I said, there's no particular policy for the diocese. I mean, it is up to each individual pastor, each individual parish as to exactly what their policy is going to be. So it's something that they each individually have to deal with.
But the fear, I think if people have an unnatural fear, that's not good. They should know that the H1N1 is milder than the regular flu. You don't worry about the regular flu at all, right? But now, because it had a name, swine flu, it got everybody bent out of shape. If they called it the spring flu, it probably wouldn't have been as bad.
Exactly.
And the other thing is it affects younger people more than the regular flu. So we're seeing younger people get sick, and unfortunately, occasionally a younger person die. So you really want to be educated as to what to do. And I think we tell people who's at risk, but we don't tell them when to call their doctor. So if you have fever for more than 100, fever of 101 for 3 days, you get in and see the doctor. Shortness of breath or chest pain, you got to call the doctor right away. Dizziness or vomiting that's persistent. Those are the worrisome signs. Or if you've had the flu, it got better, and now a day later you're getting the flu again. That's also a worrisome sign. So that's when to call the doctor. Otherwise, you can really treat it at home. And I would put a mask, if you're in a house with other contacts, put a mask on so you can spread it as you cough. But remember that the major way to transmit it is through touching surfaces. So common sense at home as well as in church, carry a bottle of Purell with you, and after you've had that handshake, you can wash it. or the elbow nudge, which I love.
Yeah.
You know the elbow nudge?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right
You
like
do
that.
a good elbow nudge.
That's good.
Yeah.
Or the Howie Mandel fist bump and all
The
that.
fist bump, but that still transmits a little bit.
You got, yeah.
So
It's better than the full-on handshake, I would guess, because you're not grabbing hand to hand,
Right.
but it's still a little bit there.
or the wave.
Right. Hey, how you doing? But so okay, are there any major differences really as far as symptoms go between swine flu, H1N1 virus, I should say, or and the regular seasonal flu? What are the differences there?
The biggest one, the flu, is when it comes on, hits you like a freight train, you have 103 fever, all your muscles ache, you have that.
Yeah.
Typically never involved the GI tract, no diarrhea or vomiting. This flu has vomiting and diarrhea associated with many of the cases, so that's a difference. Also, the length of time that you're infected. With the regular flu, 24 hours after your fever is gone, you're safe. Here it could go up to a week after you've had the flu.
Wow.
So you want to be, I think you got to be diligent, because if somebody can have it 2 days before they get the flu, as we said, you may be infecting people. So you want to use proper hygiene wherever you're going. It's a good idea to get the kids at school doing this, at college, and itself, and in all activities of life, to keep it in mind that the biggest risk is through touching. An average person touches his hand to his face every 4 minutes. So that's how it spreads mostly.
Yeah, through the eyes and through the
the
pores
eyes
and the
and
skin as well, right?
Luckily, we know the vaccine is coming. We know that by the first week in October, and everybody should get it. At first, they're going to give it to those most at risk: pregnant women, children under 5, and healthcare workers. And then they have enough for everyone. It'll take about 8 days to become resistant, where you won't be worrying about getting the flu after the vaccine.
Right.
In the meantime, Tamiflu, which is an antiviral which your doctor can give to you if you're in the high-risk group or you're having any of the symptoms I mentioned, should be given, because most of the people who've died have not had Tamiflu, which could have prevented their death had they gotten it in time. So this is not the kind of thing you say, oh, I don't want to bother my doctor. Bother the doctor. If you have any questions, particularly children under 5, pregnant women, or anybody with underlying health conditions like diabetes, asthma, heart disease, you know who you are. Anybody with a chronic condition, you getting the flu, call the doctor and say, should I be taking Tamiflu?
All right. Well, very good. Well, Dr. Garner, thank you so much for your advice and your insight. We really appreciate it today.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Well, Dr. Steve Garner there, host of Ask the Doctor, which you can see every Tuesday night at 8 o'clock right here exclusively on the net. And you can also check out the show's website. It's netny.net/askthedoctor.
And when Currents returns, what Americans think about abortion and healthcare reform. We'll have that and the rest of the day's headlines straight ahead.
Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime.
Let's take a look now at the day's headlines. A new poll finds nearly half of Americans want no federal money to go toward funding abortions and a new health care overhaul. The Rasmussen poll shows 48% of those surveyed want taxpayer-funded abortion explicitly prohibited. Well, health care was a hot topic today in Washington as the 4th annual Value Voters Summit got underway. The event, funded by the Family Research Council, is drawing many of the Republican Party's brightest hopes for the 2012 presidential election. One of them is Congressman Mike Pence of Indiana, who says Americans want meaningful health care reform.
But the American people don't want a government-run insurance plan paid for with billions of dollars of taxes that will lead to a government takeover of health care in this nation. And the American people will not stand for government-run insurance that uses taxpayer money to fund abortions in this country.
Also on the speaker's list at the Value Voters Summit, former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee, former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin, and former House Speaker Newt Gingrich. Well, the president of Notre Dame has announced pro-life initiatives at the school following the university's honoring of President Obama last spring. Father John Jenkins says he's formed a task force to consider and recommend ways the university can support the pro-life movement.
E.T. and the church aren't mutually exclusive. That is according to one Vatican official. Father Jose Gabriel Funes, the director of the Vatican Observatory, says a belief in aliens, it doesn't necessarily go against a belief in God. He noted that the church has not made a statement on the issue. Well, music can bridge borders, and that's the hope of one Cuban musician. As we hear from CNN's Shasta Darlington, Havana will be the site of a large gathering this weekend designed to build unity in Cuba And it's also a place that has a connection to Pope John Paul.
Cuba's hottest salsa band says music can do more than make you dance. It can break down borders, they say. And maybe ease tensions between old foes like the United States and Cuba. That's what the leader of Los Van Van hopes will happen Sunday. I can't tell you if it'll succeed or not, he says. It's like breaking a barrier that's always existed, that still exists. Los Van Van will be the closing act of a mega concert in the heart of Havana, organized by Colombian pop star Juanes, who lives in Miami. He calls it a peace concert. Some anti-Castro exiles in Florida call it a declaration of war. They've smashed Juanes' music in protest. But in Cuba, even jailed dissidents defend the show. Oscar Espinosa Chepe was one of 75 dissidents imprisoned in 2003. He was later released. We think Juanes' initiative is good because it can help bring about national reconciliation and unity among Cubans, he says. 36 of the jailed dissidents have signed a petition agreeing with him. Chepe's wife Miriam was one of the founders of Ladies in White, who marched to demand the release of political prisoners.
They're bringing hope, they're bringing music, they're bringing new ideas to the Cuban people, and the Cuban people deserve to enjoy all this.
Cuban blogger and government critic Yoani Sanchez puts it simply: let Juanes come. More than a dozen artists from Cuba and abroad will join Juanes on this very stage on Sunday. And it's empty right now, but we're expecting more than 500,000 people to pack Revolution Plaza, despite sizzling temperatures. It's a historic landmark, the site of the annual May 1st parades, and the location of Pope John Paul II's huge Mass in 1998. And soon it will launch what participants hope will be a series of concerts that bridge an unfriendly divide.
I love salsa music. That is Shasta Darlington reporting.
So fun. There's much more Currents coming up straight ahead.
Coming up, education, vocation, and inspiration through a priest's eyes.
These are among the finest people I've ever met. And no matter what vocation they choose, I really believe they'll make an impact for good in the world.
Well, finally tonight, throughout this year for priests, we want you to meet some of the shepherds guiding the flocks.
And tonight we meet a man with a flock that's very unique and very young. Earlier in the week, we showed you Cathedral Preparatory Seminary, the last high school of its kind in the whole country.
And you're about to meet the school's spiritual director, Father John Cush. He's also in charge of the recruitment program for priests in the Brooklyn Diocese, a very busy man. And he talks about what he calls the joy of being a priest in tonight's Eyewitness.
If the fervor that I might have for my priesthood can be passed on to somebody, and maybe if it's just one or two kids, and my time here at Cathedral Prep, maybe that's what God wanted, and maybe that's why God put me here on this world. It's a humbling experience for me to think that in some small way God could use me to help really form a person into a person of prayer. One of the reasons why I felt called to be a priest really was because I attended here at Cathedral Prep. It was the example of the priest of the Diocese of Brooklyn, and I can look back and tell you these men are my personal heroes, and now to work with them as I do, it's just an inspiration to me as a priest. I look at some of the young men. These are among the finest people I've ever met. And no matter what vocation they choose, I really believe they'll make an impact for good in the world. I've always had the opportunity in some way to be involved in formation and education. That's been a very good experience, not only to teach the young people here at Cathedral, but also to teach older people at the Pastoral Institute, at the Diaconate Formation Program, and at the College Seminary residents in Douglaston in their pre-theology program. I've had the opportunity to teach Christology, which is really my love. That's been a great blessing in my life. Everything I ever thought that priesthood would be, it has been for me, thanks be to God, so much more. Nothing to me is as important as the daily celebration of the Mass. If it wasn't for the Eucharist, I can't even imagine what our faith would be. It brings sense, it brings power, it brings order to my life and my prayer life, and it shapes my priesthood. One of the tougher things I've had to deal with as a priest is to realize you can't please everyone. It's something which may seem as benign as taking a kid aside who's failed a test and say, listen, what happened here, to something as difficult as saying to someone on a parish level, you know, we can't allow this to continue. It's difficult sometimes, but that's all part of being Christ the Good Shepherd. I mean, life is a life of sacrifice, no matter what it is. What we give up in terms of obedience, but we give up in terms of chaste celibacy, we get so much more back in return. And yeah, there's always going to be that desire that's there for companionship, but it's celibacy that makes you appreciate all the people that you are serving. Celibacy that makes you appreciate the friendships and relationships that you do have with other people in a non-possessive way. We as priests, we get so much more from the people of God than they really do from us. It may not seem that way, but it really is inspirational. I love being a priest. I can honestly say, in this year of priests, there is nothing I'd rather be doing. So I would say it's a good investment, ultimately, giving your life to Christ, without a doubt.
Father John Cush, tonight's eyewitness, and he's kind of come full circle there at Cathedral Prep.
Yeah, he has, actually. You can tell he's so enthusiastic. And he reminded me of what Sister Anna said earlier in the show when she was talking about living amongst the poor and how she's inspired by them and how much they mean to her and how much, you know, she gets her strengthened in her faith. Well, he's basically saying the same thing with his parishioners and with what celibacy brings him in terms of valuing his relationships that much more with, you know, everyone that he meets in and through the church and whatnot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. It's so encouraging that parallel is there, that they're working with two completely different groups of people, but they kind of are getting the same thing from it, that it strengthens them and helps them go through their daily life, knowing that they can make a difference for somebody else.
Right, like her point was, you know, you strip everything down and then you're left with not much. You appreciate and you value everything else that you do have, and it seems like he's kind of saying something along those lines too.
Absolutely.
Well, that is all for this edition of Currents. Earlier in the week, we did look ahead to the Great Irish Fair this weekend. You can go there for yourself, and we'll also have a full report on the festivities on Monday.
But until then, remember, you can always watch us online. Head on over to our new look website and our new address. It's currentsny.net.
And from there, you can also check out the station's, the website where they're giving away tickets to the Broadway smash called 39 Steps. You can just head over to netny.net for more details and your chance to win.
All right. Well, that'll do it for this time. I'm Matt McClure. Thank you so much for watching. And for Francesca Maxime, I'm Matt McClure. Have a great weekend.